Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, on this daily tech podcast, I love exploring real-world examples of how technology is transforming our world. And one of the things I don't like doing is hyping up projects based on future promises. Sure, the future looks cool, but I'm fascinated by what we can do right here, right now. Oh man, do you know how hard it was for me not to burst out in a Fatboy Slim right here, right now there? Luckily, I think I reined myself in just in time. Seriously though, one of my favourite guests on this show is Taryn Southern. And she's been on the show twice before and is constantly leveraging emerging technologies in a way that I genuinely find inspirational. She didn't miss a beat after becoming the first artist to compose an album entirely with artificial intelligence, and that album was called I Am AI, but she's now turning her focus to film, specifically co-directing a documentary on real-life cyborgs. It is an incredibly cool project, and it will certainly make you think about technology and where we're heading. And I think what I love most about it is it's not going to spoon feed you an opinion or a particular narrative and you go home with that, like many of those Netflix documentaries that we've all seen. But the aim is for you to walk away with more questions than answers and to actually think about everything that you've seen and where we're heading. But enough from me. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way back to Los Angeles so we can speak with Taryn Southern, AI artist, storyteller, and now documentary filmmaker, who's going to talk all about her new film, I Am Human. So in 825 interviews, I think you're only the third person to make it on here 3 times. So welcome back to the show, Taryn.
I feel honoured.
But if for some reason people have missed our previous conversations, I find that hard to believe. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Taryn Southern, and I'm a storyteller and very passionate about the intersection of science, technology, and entertainment. So I work in a variety of mediums: digital, film, music, and most recently produced an album using artificial intelligence, and my film I Am Human, which explores the future of brain-computer interfaces, is premiering at the Tribeca Film Festival in just a couple of weeks.
Fantastic. Now, as you know by now, I'm a huge fan of your work, which includes creating an album which composed entirely of artificial intelligence. You've created music videos using AR, VR and 360 video, and also collaborated with the global community to create song lyrics and share royalties using Ethereum smart contracts. I mean, during that time, enhancing that creative process with emerging technologies, I've got to ask, what have you learned from it all?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot of different lessons from these various projects. They're all unique in their own way. I think the overarching lesson that I've taken away from working with advanced technology or frontier technology is there's a wild, wild west out there where there are no rules, and there's a lot of experimentation and a lot of really exciting possibility. And I think as a storyteller, what gets me really excited is being able to take a deep dive into these subjects and try to find a different narrative than what exists in popular media, which typically sort of finds itself in a more dystopic or negative view of what the future might look like with some of these technologies. And I think that the reality is probably a bit more balanced. And so I have a lot of fun kind of experimenting with that and figuring out what those narratives are.
And like you hinted a few moments ago, you are now turning your focus to film, specifically co-directing a documentary on real-life cyborgs. But before we talk about that in a little more detail, the first thing that I noticed that you've achieved yet another first. I think you and your co-director, Elena, are now the first females to co-direct and produce a sci-fi documentary. So can you tell me more about the story behind that partnership and finding out that you were setting a benchmark at the same time?
Well, Elena and I met a couple of years ago. I had wanted to put together this documentary on the future of the brain, and she has an incredible amount of documentary experience as a producer on a number of projects, and I really come from the digital world and post-production heavy world, and so we really made a great partnership in in figuring out how to tell this story in a different way than perhaps what we'd seen in other forms of media. We really, really wanted to tell an emotionally compelling story and put a face to the future, so to speak, and really follow these three humans who are on a journey trying to make a decision about whether or not to have these implantable brain interfaces. And I think a lot of the questions that we tried to pose in the film are ones that many people in our generation will be faced with over the course of their lifetime, especially as we learn more about the brain and start to integrate this technology within society at a much bigger level.
So about the film then, which, as you said, is called I Am Human, and it explores how implantable brain interfaces are merging man and machine. So can you just set the scene and offer listeners an overview of exactly what they can expect from the documentary?
Well, there are a number of things. We set out to answer a few different questions. One was, who are the faces of the people who are actually receiving this implantable brain technology? A lot of people don't realize this, but there are several 100,000 people in the world who currently have implantable interfaces in their brain. And that's a pretty large number. So I think that alone is shocking to people. So we wanted to chronicle who are these individuals and what is part of their decision-making process in receiving this technology. And then in taking sort of a very close look at one's individual choice and journey in receiving this technology or having this technology implanted in their brain, we also widen out the scope and really explore the implications, the larger societal implications of what this technology will mean as it continues to evolve and change and finds itself in very different hands in terms of innovation. And so I think, our big goal here is that people really walk out of the theater with more questions than answers, but hopefully have a very different and mixed and balanced view of what this technology could mean for themselves personally as well as society.
So who do you speak to in the film? And is there anyone that you were particularly excited about getting involved with the project too?
Yeah, so we chronicled 3 human stories, as well as the scientists and the entrepreneurs who are on the front lines of this research for each of their individual stories. So you'll meet those characters in the film. One is a tetraplegic, so he has no ability to move his arms and legs. We have a woman with Parkinson's and a blind man. And then alongside them, of course, all of the scientists, doctors, and research centers who are involved in this cutting edge research that's being done. So a lot of really exciting institutions and scientists that we got to work with and meet, like the Wyss Center in Switzerland. We worked with Toronto Western Hospital, which is on the forefront of a lot of neurosurgery. We worked with University of Washington, who's doing some really cool cutting edge research studies on brain-to-brain communication. We worked with the Cleveland FES Center, which is doing a lot of interesting research on brain interfaces for the restoration of movement and touch. So there were a number of people that I was incredibly excited to be collaborating with. I mean, these scientists are at the top of their field. They're doing really, really interesting things. And I think it's time for the public to have a greater awareness of the incredible work that they're doing. They're in the lab and it's my job to hopefully get their stories out of the lab.
So I've got to ask then, what inspired you to create I Am Human? I've got a feeling there must be a story behind your own inspiration too.
Well, a few years ago, I saw that series like Black Mirror and Westworld were becoming huge hits, and I too am a fan. I love the exploring the dark side of all of this technology. Just because I'm so interested in the subject matter, I realized there is a sci-fi story that begs to be told that already exists, and it's here. It's in reality. It's not fictionalized, and it just requires someone to go out there and roll up their sleeves and tell these stories. And so I was really inspired to try and turn the Black Mirror kind of model on its head. How do we tell a more sci-fi positive story about what currently exists? Because to me, I think what's out there is actually it's better than science fiction. But that was really the impetus behind the idea, and just wanting to create a new narrative and help these scientists and help these institutions gain more traction in what they're doing. Because I think what they're doing is really admirable and really worthy of media attention. But oftentimes, if we don't have something right in front of us, or we don't have a language to describe what it is that we're seeing, it's hard. it's hard for these areas of science to get the attention they deserve. So it's like going to space. Once the man actually stood on the moon, it became a really easy aspiration for a lot of Americans, or a lot of the world rather, to look at and say, hey, I want to do that. I want to go into space, or I want to support the space programs that currently exist. And I think the same could be said for neuroscience. We just don't know what it's like to go inside our own brains.
It's such a great point you made there about what's happening out there at the moment is more interesting than science fiction, because today there are several 100,000 people in the world with implantable technology in their brains right now. And by 2029, that number is expected to triple. So as someone that is passionate about technology, how does that make you feel about the future?
It's fascinating, right? I mean, I think when I first started working on this film, there were all levels of uneasy that I felt about these kinds of statistics. I mean, I don't think any of us look at the idea of implantable technology in our brains and say, "Ooh, that sounds like fun." And what does this mean for us? But I think in really taking a deep dive into the unfamiliar, into the things that make us uncomfortable rather, we find a lot of really interesting answers, and many of those are unexpected and highly optimistic. So, yes, does it challenge what it means to be human? Absolutely. Does it force us to confront a lot of our pre-existing questions on identity and purpose? Yes. And what it means to be a conscious human being that has free will. There are a ton of fascinating questions that kind of stem from this exploration. And ultimately, I think that's a very personal journey that people have to go on to answer those questions. But we're there now. And I think that the exciting part is it is a highly personalized journey, and people can kind of arrive at whatever answers they choose based on how they feel and what they learn.
So what's the key message you want to deliver with I'm Human, and what do you want people to be thinking about on the way home to the car park, or the morning after having seen it, and they're still thinking about it? What do you want people to be taking away from that?
I'm sure that people will have some mixed feelings, and I think that's okay. I think that there will be some resounding feelings of optimism, and also probably some cautious terror that exists as a result of that. But I do hope that I've expanded someone's set of reactions to the subject matter, and at least given them a platform or an entry point, if you will, to learn more and become more involved in the discussion, because it's inevitable that this technology will change the course of human history. The idea of implanting things in the very source of our identity and being able to actually turn the knobs on various component parts of our personality, of our mobility, of our memory, of our learning capacity, all of these different things. They're very frightening to people, but in many ways we do a lot of these sort of tweaks already to our brains through more rudimentary tools like coffee or pharmaceuticals, or whatever the method of choice may be for any one human. We're doing these things, and now we're able to target these areas of the brain with much more specificity. So a lot of these questions will become more relevant as time goes on. I think that this technology, as I said, it's here, but it is moving faster, and it will improve. And I think depending on where someone lives and the kind of the sort of cultural reactions to this technology will have a huge impact on how it's adopted around the world. But ultimately, I just want people to walk out of the theater with a more nuanced view of what it is, how it could impact them, and hopefully not actually be terrified of it. I think the end result will be something that's more well balanced than what you would come out of from watching an episode of Black Mirror.
Excellent. Now, you must have one of the coolest resumes I've ever seen out there. I mean, we've got AI composed albums, AR, VR, and 360-degree music videos, collaborative blockchain, smart contracts, and now filmmaking. I mean, dare I ask what you have in store for us next?
Oh my goodness, a vacation. No, I'm just kidding. I really want to continue documentary filmmaking. I had so much fun on this film. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of subject matter that just begs to be explored. And I really like the idea of doing more genre bending docs. So sort of combining like a style of filmmaking with an interesting subject matter to make that more appealing to audiences. That's very interesting to me. So I have a couple of ideas up my sleeve, but I will probably take at least a break, a 1 week break when this is done.
I don't blame you. Now, before I let you go, where can people find out where to watch I Am Human and also find out more information about all the incredible cool work that you're doing?
Thank you, Neil. Well, if they happen to be at the Tribeca Film Festival next week, they can absolutely try to get tickets at Will Call. We premiere May 2nd, May 3rd, and May 4th. And then we will be doing the film festival circuit following that premiere. So people can keep in touch with the film on Twitter. It's at I Am Human, or on Facebook and Instagram, we're I Am Human Film. So if they're interested in learning more, catching a screening, hopefully we'll sell the film and it will be available to mass audiences at some point later this year or next year. But in the meantime, would of course love to have as many people as possible showing up to the festivals and getting to see it on a big screen, just because I think that's a really special experience.
Well, I'll add all those links to the show notes that will accompany the podcast. But more than anything, it's been an absolute delight to get you back on here today. Find out more about
you're so kind.
Cool work that you're doing. Well, I'm sure we'll do it again next year and you'll have another crazy project on your hands, because I don't think you're the kind of person that's going to be able to take a 6 month break. But more than anything, a big thank you for coming on and joining me again today.
Oh, as always, thank you, Neil. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
If you do check out I Am Human at one of the film festivals we mentioned there, I want you all to make me a promise. So please, I want you to come back and report to me and share your thoughts. Can you do that? I don't ask too much of you all. If you could let me know, I would be incredibly grateful, because I am a huge fan of Taryn and how she's continuously pushing the envelope. She doesn't say, ask the question, I wonder if tech will do this one day. She just goes out there and does it. So in the show notes, I will link to the previous conversations, because I think there is so much gold in there about her work with technology and enhancing the creative process from everything from songwriting, producing, to using AR, VR and 360 in the videos to the singles. But over to you. I pass the virtual microphone back to you all listening and ask you to share with me your thoughts on everything in today's conversation and all the topics we've discussed, or indeed anything at all. And you can do that by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look for @NeilC.Hughes. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find online. So finally, a big thank you to Taryn for coming back on, and an even bigger thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in each day to this Daily Tech podcast. But I'm afraid we're out of time. So thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.